So I did my project on how obesity is related to genetics. So obesity means having too much body fat. And it's different than being overweight, which just means weighing too much, not necessarily having too much body fat. So obesity has to do with a high energy intake and a low energy expenditure. So a little bit of an overview of how genes are related to obesity. So as we already know, genes influence every aspect of human development and physiology, and so obesity is no exception to this. But there are many factors that contribute to a person's risk of developing obesity, and genes are just one small factor. And the current level of research shows that genes only have a very small effect on obesity, and that genes aren't a person's destiny. So there's two main kinds of genetic obesity. You have the rare one, which is called monogenic obesity, and that's just a mutation in one gene. And then you have polygenic obesity, which is kind of combinations of genes and interactions between genes that help to cause obesity in a person. So monogenic obesity. So monogenic obesity is when a defect in one gene causes obesity. And it's really not very common, it only happens in about 5% of obesity cases. And monogenic forms of obesity are mainly caused by mutations in the leptin or the melanocortin axis involved in the food intake regulation. And these include the genes of leptin and its receptor and proconvertase. And roughly 24 genes can cause monogenic obesity. And occurrences of monogenic obesity are evidence that obesity may be the result of genetic mutations. And only a very small number of monogenic obesity cases have been discovered, but there may be more that haven't been studied or observed. So one gene that scientists are studying that they think could cause monogenic obesity is the MRAP gene. And a Harvard Medical School study was done recently where mice with a mutation in the MRAP2 gene were fed the same amount of food as normal counterparts, and the mice with the mutation gained weight and they couldn't burn body fat, while their normal counterparts didn't gain weight. And this gene, MRAP2, has a human counterpart that's thought to be related to the regulation of metabolism and food consumption. So researchers think that it may have an effect on a person's obesity, on a person developing obesity, and it might be a monogenic form of obesity. Okay, so now we have the other type of obesity, it's polygenic obesity. So most cases of obesity are caused by genetic variations in many different genes, not just one gene, right? And currently hundreds of genes are known to have an effect on obesity. Each gene only makes a small contribution on obesity, but when these genes add up, they can cause people to become obese. And the genotype that contributes to obesity deposits fat, and that's what causes it. So the reason that these genotypes exist is because it was beneficial in early human life when food was scarce. Being able to build up fat was important when there wasn't a lot of food. So now it's still around in some people. So now just a little bit of a conclusion. Genetics do have an effect on obesity, but they are not, the be-all and end-all, and a person's destiny is not determined by their genetics. So if a person is genetically predisposed to being obese, that doesn't mean they'll necessarily become obese. And here's my works cited.